Hello. So, I went to a new therapist. He's a Redditor. No. He turned out to be a Redditor atheist. No. Dude. It was a bad therapist appointment overall. I would give him credit a little bit because he did have a couple good questions. But overall, it was not a very good appointment, which is disappointing for me. Yeah, so he was advertised as a somatic therapist. So I'm looking for a somatic therapist. Somatic, that just means in the body. Um, the reason I'm looking for that is because I have this complex PTSD slash PTSD dissociative subtype. What that means is that I'm sort of cut off from my body. Like I don't really feel it as much. Like I function, but I don't really feel my body that well. Not in like a normal way, I guess you could say. And it's actually really horrible. And I'm in pain a lot of the time, like all the time, most of the time. But I'm kind of numbed out, but it's horrible. And the thing is that the way you treat that specific issue, PTSD dissociative subtype, is that you're supposed to work with trauma stored in the body or that kind of separation between the mind and the body. Now this guy, he advertised as being that, like a somatic therapist. Not really. Not really. Not the type that I was looking for anyway. I was looking for specifically sensory motor psychotherapy or somatic experiencing. But even then, it's kind of like I just have to go and see, right? And I asked him. I said, what does that look like? And he kind of said that it was. He kind of just gave like a vague statement and said it was kind of like mindfulness, or he works using mindfulness. That was it. Like, well, there was a number of things where I knew I knew it was not really a good fit. But hearing that, I was like, yeah, okay, well, that's the. I didn't say this, but I knew that this is the critical. That's the critical point, right? Whether or not he can do the treatment. It's also important if you connect with your therapist on like a relationship level or a relational level or something. If you like your therapist, that's actually important. There's a study done. I forget who did it, but it's in that book, The Heart and Soul of Change, what really works in therapy or what matters in therapy, something like that. And it's like 15% the technique or the modality. It's 30%. This is what accounts for clients getting better or improvement. It's 15% the technique or the modality. It's 30% the relationship to the therapist, whether you trust your therapist, think they want the best for you, are doing a good job. That's 30%, and it's 40% extra therapeutic work done by the client. So what the client does outside of therapy counts for 40% of improvement. And I forget what the last little bit is, but so it's important, the technique, but I think in my case it's kind of especially important, sort of, because I would like it if somebody could like almost like be close, be near, or something like that, while I recount or while I process the things that are difficult for me, essentially, which would look like crying. That's the whole point. That's the whole idea. It's extremely painful, and it would look like crying, or it would require that, which I don't love. Okay, I'm not like this is something I want to do. I'm doing this because it's important and because it's like something that needs to be done, if that makes sense. Because I could choose not to, but I've tried that before and it doesn't work. So, yeah. Anyway, this guy was like a Reddit atheist. And he actually told me that because I had, questions, right? I went in there and I was like ready. I wrote out my my questions and my goals and my, some things about me, because it's the same every single time you go see a different therapist or whatever. Almost across the board, they want to build rapport, they want to get to know you, and they ask you stupid questions, they want to feel you out. And a lot of times these therapists are actually scared people. This is something maybe people don't really realize. They are smart, somewhat, but they're also very scared people, and they also are usually somewhat traumatized in their own way from their own life somehow. And this is what gives them kind of like an interest in psychology or in therapy. I should know I have a psychology degree and I actually did therapy before. So I've worked in the field and I've worked with these people, and I've also gone to enough therapists. I kind of know this by now. But the thing is, they won't tell you that. A lot of times they won't tell you that. Some will. I actually appreciate that more if they will tell you rather than if they won't tell you, and if they try and sit from a coin of vantage or kind of a removed way, and then they try and, push buttons from far away, and they say things in a weird way, and you're always wondering. Like, some people like that, but personally, the game. I know the game. I know. I've seen behind the curtain, so I know how it works, and I know that they really don't have a whole lot. There is a whole lot there, but once you know like what people are doing, then that kind of changes things, and it's more trust is more important. So anyway, I asked them some questions, and actually I was explaining, and I have a few things written down here, but he kept asking questions. I think, because it's their training. And I was just explaining, but it ended up, kind of getting into some digressions and sort of just taking up a lot of time. And also he just kind of, he didn't really know a whole lot, which is okay. I'm not trying to be mean, but he was asking questions about, because I was explaining like about me. I said, I'm an Eastern Orthodox catechumen, and so he was asking about the church. And it's like, almost like nobody, it seems, really knows church history. And, everybody's familiar with the church, Christianity, Jesus, the Bible, but just to varying degrees, and they have a varied flavor in their mouth from it. Some people are believers, right? A lot of people are believers in Jesus, but even amongst believers, there's a huge disagreement on a lot of things. And so there's always a lot of discussion to be had, but I would say that where it turns ugly is when somebody's wrong. People don't like to be wrong, especially when it concerns their core beliefs and their faith. People do not like to be wrong. Let me tell you that. I think everybody knows that, but it's true. But what I've learned and what I know by now is that actually, yes, some people are wrong. A lot of people are wrong. And that's kind of like the harsh truth, you could say. That, and also the painful one, and maybe the scary one, because it actually necessitates, or it is kind of like a conflict, basically, because, well, if people are wrong, about what they really believe, about what they operate, about how they think, and the reason that they operate the way that they do, a lot of people get angry about that if it's discussed. So anyways, that's kind of like my point there, but I wasn't trying to be mean to him, but I explained, some different things, and it's kind of actually good for me in a way because it helps me to kind of get a sense of my own position, and the reality of what people actually know and don't know. Like, actually, this guy said that he went to church for a few years, but he went to some sort of Protestant church and he stopped going, which is actually relatable. I think a lot of people can have some sort of a similar story to that, and me too. And I told him, like, my own story. Like, I was raised in the Roman Catholic Church, but I didn't understand it, and so I lapsed for a long time, and then I came back to the church after a psychedelic experience, and he seemed interested, but I didn't really want to get into all that. But anyway, yeah, so yeah, and I was explaining my book idea. The reason I was explaining all this stuff is because I was mentioning this stuff as just my about me, and he kept asking questions. He kept wanting to know more. So I told him. And then the thing is, though, that it's a lot. Like, I think it is kind of a lot for people. So one thing I think I could work on or do better in the future when I talk to people is have more like a condensed version of what's going on if people ask me about me, or about or are interested in just want to ask me some kind of question about what I'm doing or how I'm doing or whatever. Then I can tell them just the tip of the iceberg version, and if they're interested, I can tell them more. I think that's a good idea because I have trouble knowing what other people know. Maybe that sounds stupid. I mean, I have trouble, I think everybody would have trouble with that, but I kind of have trouble realizing what people know and don't know, so sometimes I say too much because I'm trying to, like, tell them, and not try and be rude or anything, but give them the correct information, I guess you could say. And yeah, so sometimes I just end up saying way too much because I'm not really sure what they do or do not know. And with a lot of people, or some people, they will just kind of let you keep talking, and they're actually waiting for your facial expression or your tone to change for them to react. They're not actually really processing what you're saying on, like, much of a connected level, like to their own knowledge or whatever. Sometimes, but a lot of times they're just kind of paying attention to your voice and your facial expressions, which I find to be really annoying, to be honest, because yeah, I'm more concerned with, like, what's true. I'm more concerned with that kind of stuff, whereas a lot of people are concerned with fitting in and having the quote-unquote right response and getting people to like them, which I understand. I was like that for a long time too. I still am like that in some ways, just a lot less now. Okay, so oh yeah, also I was telling him my outlook about Canada. I was saying Canada sucks because it does suck now. But I was kind of explaining why, like what's going on. Just my outlook on Canada. I told him that, we used to be organically a friendly and polite people, but now and that was like maybe 20 years ago, and that's our image, but it was organically that way maybe like 20 years ago. but it has since changed, and I said that it's more like Canadians are now defensive, passive aggressive, and cynical. Um, and the reason for that, I was saying is because, um, well, I believe that Canada it's a gerontocracy and a gynocracy, but both of those, meaning ruled by old people and ruled by women, but both of those groups are actually controlled by Jews. Jewish power and influence controls both. And then so he was just, I don't know if he was humoring me or what, but he seemed to be following along, paying attention. But like, again, I have to point it out, this guy's a Reddit atheist. So Reddit atheists, they're like extreme soy, yeah, like, it's a totally different reality. I don't know, like, so and I told him, and he was saying, well, he was asking about, I think he was asking about the Jews or something, but I said, well, they work for the devil. That's like that's what I actually believe. I believe Jews work for the devil. And he said, do you think they're doing that like on purpose? Or I said, well, no, I think they're actually deceived. Why? Because the devil is the greatest deceiver. It's actually what the name means, along with like slanderer and accuser. These are what the terms devil, Satan, and Lucifer, I think, meant light bringer, but he's the fallen angel. But I think all three of those refer to the same evil one, apparently. But yeah, but he was asking all these questions, and if people want to know, I will tell them. But a lot of times, and I said it to him, I said, well, I struggle getting along and talking to people because, I don't really want to just sound like a conspiratard. He pretended like he didn't know what that meant, but I said, well, a conspiracy retard, it's like an internet term. But yeah, it is pretty tough. I mean, Canada is just so fake. Like, it's so pretentious and fake. And also, I told him, I said, there's like a lot of, what's going on now is that we live under chilled speech. So you just cannot say stuff without the room going cold. If you say anything that is sort of, as I always put it, against the narrative, that's just kind of like the typical Canadian fake ass, excuse my language, the typical Canadian fake way of talking. The room goes cold, but it's because free speech and discourse is really discouraged in this country. Yeah, by law too. And just culturally, everything's about like hate speech and everything else. But the people are so, I guess you could say, psyoped or maybe shell-shocked or whatever from COVID and whatever else, and from the internet as well, that people just don't want to be in a situation where somebody is agitated. So most Canadians are just kind of like, they keep their head down, very defensive type. And yeah, so this country's kind of just really not doing well. But yeah, and I find it weird when people, and I get that this is like a therapy session, this guy's a therapist, but I find it weird when people ask questions about this stuff as if the country's not like doing horribly. But I think that like what I try to do is I try to stick to the data, and I was telling him like, well, yeah, it depends on what metric you use, but most metrics, things are not going well for the average person. Like since 2012, the mental health rates, especially among adolescents, youth and adolescents, has skyrocketed. That is, anxiety and depression especially, but other disorders as well, among young people, like under 18, but also people older than that as well, has gone way up since 2012. But Anyway, so it's kind of a long aside, but yeah, so I don't know. I was asking him about his qualifications and everything as well, and I also asked him about his and credit to him for actually telling me what his faith system was. I mean, people don't have to tell you, right, if you ask them. But he also, I asked him what his attachment style is. I just think that's an important question. I'm not trying to pick on him. This would be something that I would ask anybody, but any therapist, because at this point now I know that that's actually very important. And I told him the reason is because a goal that I have is I would like to have an earned secure attachment, which is basically like your attachment style is extremely important, but for how you relate to other people, that is through friendships, relationships, and work and everything else. But if you're part of the half of people that has an insecure attachment style, whether it be anxious avoidant or anxious avoidant, a combination of the two, what do you do then? Are you just screwed? Well, you can, apparently, at least Pete Walker says this in his book Complex PTSD, and I'd never heard this before. You can develop what they call an earned secure attachment style, and the best way to do that is with a therapist who is kind of like your test subject in a sense, or like your safety zone. I don't really love the language like safe space and everything, but it is true that your therapist is like the person where you learn to have kind of like a safe relationship with somebody, and from there, you earn it in some sense, and then you go out and you can, having modeled it, in the therapy or whatever, you go out and you can replicate that with real people, like in real life, I mean to say, not with real people. Therapists are real people too, but yeah. So that's why I asked him, and he was hesitant, but he said that he had a secure attachment style. My cat wants in my room. So as you can see, I have my EMF canopy now, but the reason I'm keeping my cat out is because he might claw it. He's already put his little claws kind of like poked through a couple spots, and I just can't really let him in because he will wreck it, and it was over $700. So, but the EMF canopy actually works. I kind of feel pretty bad about not letting him in, but the thing is, it was very expensive. And the EMF canopy kind of works. I had to, or I tested it out, and it does work. I feel like I sleep better. I feel better when I'm in there. And what it does is it just blocks electromagnetic frequency. And if you did not know, EMF is a real thing, and it's basically just radio waves and magnetic waves or frequencies. I'm not exactly sure on all the terminology, but it is stuff that radiates from cell towers, Wi-Fi, your phone, and we're basically exposed to it all the time in the modern world now. And the bad thing about it is that it actually does have negative effects on our health, meaning, oh, maybe I should just let him in. I don't want to though, because he'll wreck the canopy. Yeah, it decreases your dopamine. It has other effects on your neurotransmitters, which can lead to behavioral changes. And Okay, I'll let him in. I don't know if I should actually. I think he's gonna claw my canopy. Oh, cat. He's just too naturally curious and playful. And also, I think, well, I know he's definitely an anxious cat as well, but that's from living with me. And I don't feel great saying that. I think no pet owner would. But your pets, they actually kind of pick up an attachment style as well. And usually it's somewhat similar to their owners. Although pets are good for people with PTSD or other illnesses or mental illnesses or whatever, because a pet is like a stable nervous system that is non-judgmental. It's always there. It's not good to just rely on pets. Some people accumulate like a bunch of cats. I literally talked to one woman that had 12 cats before, although she said a bunch of them were like kittens and rescues or whatever. But a pet is a good thing to have. And I know some people are not pet people, or they're dog people or cat people, but I kind of love all animals. Well, most animals, I guess. Kind of all animals. I like animals because they're just they're such nice creatures. Although, of course, I eat animals. Some people would say that's hypocritical, but I think that's fine. The Bible says that we can eat animals. Humans have dominion over all of the animals, so we're allowed to eat them. We're just not supposed to abuse them. And I know a lot of people would talk about farming as abuse, especially vegans or vegetarians or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get into that discussion really. Yeah, so I felt like that therapist appointment was kind of a waste of time. But at least he listened, and I don't think he agreed with a lot, and I think he might have been humoring me on a lot, but at least he listened, so that's okay. And he did, to his credit, he did ask a couple good questions, and he also commented that it must be hard being cut off from emotions and my body, and I told him, yeah, it really is. So I appreciated that he acknowledged that. I'm just disappointed that it wasn't really able to help. I could persist, but I just know that if he doesn't really have the type of training that I'm looking for, like the type of he can't administer the type of treatment, then it's not really much of a point to continue to go. And our belief systems are also way different, So it would be kind of difficult to continue. So I'm not going to, but I will keep looking and I'll keep trying. So yeah. I got a headache actually after, and when I came home, and I think partly it's just I'm not sure why my headaches actually crop up or not, but also I did feel kind of disappointed after. I've been going to the gym a lot, but I think I need a day off. Tomorrow probably I might not go. I don't know what I'll do tomorrow, but yeah. Oh, I created a Discord for Orthodox Christian Bible study. I created one, and I invited a couple people from my church, a couple of the guys, and it was great. Somebody already joined, and they said it was a good idea, and they said I should invite more people from the church, and I think I probably will do that. And I said I'd like to make it like a weekly thing, where it's just a drop-in, and the guys can just drop in if they want and read and discuss the Bible. I think that'd be a great thing. So I think that'd be a lot of fun, or actually it'd be really beneficial, I think, as well. And I'm also thinking and kind of planning to do like evangelization. I talk about it a lot, but I think that I just kind of have to somewhat just do it. I think that's important. I do have fears. I think my main fear is like, well, I think that I'll kind of get over my fears after I do a few. Like if I do, the first one will be the hardest. And by evangelize, I just mean go to people and ask them about what they believe in, if they believe in God, if they believe in Jesus, and can I pray for them? Maybe tell them about Jesus and ask if I can pray for them. That's what I mean by evangelization. That is spreading the gospel. The gospel means good news. So that I would like to do that. Really, I would really want to do that, but I'm scared. So I think after the first one or few, I'll probably get more used to it. But I still think it might be hard. But I would say that. And I told this to the therapist. He asked a good question. He said, "Well, what is stopping you?" And I told him, like, I'm scared. But specifically, I said, like, it's hard for me to share my faith. For some reason, sometimes that makes me emotional, which I don't like, getting emotional. And the other thing that I kind of worry about is whether other people would get emotional, whether it be too emotional, like crying or something, or just angry. And so my fear is of mockery and other people getting too emotional and me not really knowing how to handle it, or myself getting too emotional. But I think it probably won't go that bad. And also I don't like rejection. I don't think anybody really does, but I think I'd have to, get over it, right? It's kind of a catastrophization, so kind of a silly worry, or it's an extreme scenario that I'm worried about, which, a lot of people do this. And I saw a thing that said 91% of worries never actually come true. So, yeah, maybe it probably wouldn't even come true. But, I would still like to try and do this. The other thing is, like, I had deleted. I had gone on like a Hinge date, and it was, these dates were kind of terrible. But I deleted it, but I re-downloaded it, and I changed my location. I live in Canada, but I changed my location to in the South in the United States. And I gotta say, I really like the women. The women are beautiful and they look happy, and most of them, they love Jesus. Like, they're open about it, and it's almost like a non-negotiable for a lot of them, in their Hinge or whatever. But they're also beautiful. But it's kind of like not a good thing because, it's kind of stupid as well, because I don't really know if it would work out. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think any of them would want to do like long distance or something, and then me come down there. But it's the thing is that women are kind of like my weakness, which I don't really like to say, but I actually brought that up in the therapy session. I said that my goal is really to use all this somatic therapy and work through my porn, masturbation, and sex addiction that I've had since age 5. And not the sex part, but the, I was exposed to this stuff at way too young of an age, and just have like a complex trauma history and toxic stress environment, which led to or contributed to or whatever this sort of lifelong struggle. And it's so horrible to have. I think a lot of people struggle with it as well, but it's honestly horrible. I mean, so I was asking this guy, like, that was my main goal, right, when I told him, and we didn't really get much done on that, which is fine. It was one session, but that is kind of my goal, you know, to work through this stuff. But I gotta say that, like, you know, beautiful women, they're like my weakness, and I think they're a weakness for a lot of men. This is just kind of obvious, but I think everybody knows this. But it seriously is kind of like a weakness for me. And I was reading the Bible. I was reading in the book of Sirach. It's a great book in the Bible, and there was a verse. It's kind of like wisdoms. Like it's kind of like Proverbs, but it's a lot of wisdom about, you know, important things, how to live your life and whatever. You know, important wisdom. And one of the verses said, "Don't stare at shapely women." That one stung. That was a hard verse. Because that is my issue, right? And I think that's a lot of men's issue, but I have that issue. I'm just like way too attracted to, or cannot resist the temptation rather, shapely women, or women that are very attractive to me. So it's very hard to resist the temptation, but I think a good step is just to identify it and talk about it, because that kind of helps in a way. Like, that really does help, because I guess sunlight is the best disinfectant, or I'm not really sure, but it's kind of like just working through stuff is, you actually have to say it. And I think a lot of people don't want to say what really bothers them, which really is like a chain. It's like a slavery in a sense, because you're not ever able to have the strength and the courage to face what is really bothering you, and therefore it has a lot of power over you. But if you can, you know, label it, and I guess you could say face the demon head on, or face the struggle, and in that way, I suppose it would have less of a hold, and then also other people can support you. Granted, other people can actually hinder you as well. That's where the whole fear of vulnerability thing comes in, is because if you share what is a vulnerability to you, to, let's say, the wrong person, they can use it against you, and nobody likes that. That's why people have trust issues in the first place, is if you've in the past, you know, put your neck out and done something that made you vulnerable, and other people hear that, and then they use it against you at some point, that's like betrayal. It feels like betrayal, and it's like your heart turns against that person. You feel extreme anger, scorn, like you want revenge in some way, and a lot of people, they just turn their heart off. They just turn their trust off, and they become very untrusting and skeptical in the future. Maybe for good reason, but it's for protective reasons. But the thing is that I think we need to have discernment, right? Not everybody is going to hurt you terribly, let's say. But yeah, those things do have a true effect on people, and especially when they happen earlier in life, they have a very strong effect on people. So anyway, all of that to say, that was my therapy session with a Reddit atheist and atheist Redditor, and I really don't like Reddit. I used to be on Reddit when I was a teenager. I started on there when I was like 16 or 17, and then I stayed on there for like 7 years or something. But Reddit is super gay. I'm not trying to be really mean by saying that, but Reddit is super gay and annoying, and the people on there are just extremely annoying. And I never even really posted, actually. I was just a lurker. But the thing is that people will go through, and this is what the majority of people do. It's actually a minority that make posts. But of that minority, there's very few original and creative people. Most people who make posts and stuff, they are in some way gaming interaction for like engagement. And this is just kind of a general thing on the internet, but it's a lot of reposts. And it's just a lot of like, it's really annoying on there. And I didn't really realize, when I was a teenager, actually, when you start on there, it's kind of like really cool and interesting, and there's so much new stuff, and people seem so witty. But over time, you realize it's just a lot of like, it's a lot of like reposts and regurgitated humor, and it's super gay and annoying. Like the heckin' big chungus Redditor, like it just gets annoying after a while, or very quickly maybe. And yeah, I switched. My friend had told me to go on 4chan, and I did. And 4chan, it was funnier, but 4chan is really hardcore. And I don't mean that in like, oh, well, can you handle it? It's really hardcore. I mean, like, it's actually bad for you. A lot of social media is bad for you, but I guess 4chan probably used to be better. A lot of people say that about the internet in general, but yeah, it's I don't know, it's just bad for you because it's constant expletives, and I'm not really sure how. I can't really put a good summarization on how it is bad for you, but it's also very contradicting on there. But the thing is that you actually do get things that are true within that. So yeah, it's a trade-off for sure. And you actually get some better information, but there's a lot of garbage as well. So yeah. Anyway, and then now, well, I've always used YouTube, and actually I hated YouTube for a long time, or didn't like YouTube for a long time, and wanted to get off of it, but now I'm literally making videos. But yeah, I've always used YouTube for a long time, and YouTube is kind of similar as well. Most of the social media platforms are, but yeah, I kind of got addicted to listening to and watching YouTube videos, which is not a good addiction, by the way, for anyone that has it, but I think a lot of people do. I think 94% of people, or adults, might be an 84 or 94% of adults use YouTube. I think in the US, probably in Canada is probably similar, but yeah, so yeah, I've always used YouTube, but now I go between YouTube and X or Twitter. But this is how people get into what I call different realities. It depends on what your media consumption is. That largely, I guess you could say predicts, but that largely influences what you believe and your sort of media reality. It is like a bubble. And the weird thing is that people don't really feel like they're in the bubble as much. They kind of feel like they're observing from the outside, or they're making all these connections and stuff that are outside the bubble. They're really not. Like, I think a lot of people think that they're smarter than they are. I probably fall into that as well. But yeah, the bubble thing is real, and it depends on your media environment, or what you take in. That really influences your beliefs, what you believe, and what you do, and then how you see everybody else. And my point is that people are now living in effectively different realities at this point, and I think that a lot of people might think that, oh, well, if you just talk to people, or people will come back together at some point. But I don't really think so, because the reason I say that is because you can be so insulated from things that you don't want to see, and curate your algorithm and everything, and then make little forays into other parts of the internet and whatever, and have your major parasocial relationships, or your main parasocial relationships, and who you go to for your information and whatever, your Discord groups and gaming groups and whatever you have. But you don't, it's just like a constant separation that goes further. It's not like they're coming back together as much. These things come back together according to major world events somewhat, but they kind of just continually separate. And I believe with that, people kind of do as well. That's why real life is important. And doing things in the real world is important. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of cooking people. It's not great. It's not a good thing for society. But I don't think anybody has a solution. So yeah. The therapist, he did ask another good question. He said, well, if you really believe that, how must that feel, and what are you going to do? And I said, well, first off, because I was saying, I believe that the point of, like I said, the gerontocracy, gynocracy, ruled by Jewish power and influence, who the Jewish people who then in turn work for the devil, are trying to destroy white Western civilization. He said, wow, well, if you really believe that, then how must that feel, and what are you going to do about it? I said, well, the first thing is that a lot of people don't even agree on what is going on. They don't even agree that that's going on. So that's the first thing. A lot of people don't even agree that's going on. The second thing is, the other question is ought. Well, what ought we be doing? First off, people don't even agree. So that makes it difficult from there. But if that is going on, I said, what ought we to do? Well, my thinking is that we ought to praise God. We ought to worship God. I think that in that way you've already won. That's, in my opinion, the highest good. That's the most important thing. And that can look differently, and you can do it in different ways, but I think that is the most important thing. And so I said, for me, prayer and spreading the good news, the gospel, I think that's what I think is important. So yeah. There's Mr. Cat.